Hello, everyone. Welcome to 2025 and Happy New Year. And welcome to the latest edition of the Lowdown on Low Code. I am John Rymer, an analyst here, former industry analyst at Forrester Research, and I was one of two people at Forrester that coined the term low code. And very happy to have you here today. As always, if you like what we're doing here, hit the like button, tell your friends. We've got a really strong community here. The more folks that join in the conversations, the better. And I'm joined today with my colleague, Francis Carden. Francis, how are you?
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Is it too late now to say Happy New Year still? I don't know. What is the deadline on that? But anyway, Happy New Year, everyone. That's probably the last time you're going to hear it from anyone. So, yeah, no, it's good to see you.
Great. Thanks for joining.
And you do yourself this service. You are the godfather of low code, as is that I've been accused of or praised for being the godfather of RPA. So our guest today might be impressed with that or not.
Well, at any rate, we are fortunate today to be joined by Richard Billington, the CTO of Netcall. Hi, Richard. Welcome. Great to have you. I met Richard and his crew back when they were called MatSoft, way back when. And MatSoft, in the research that we were doing at Forrester about low-code platforms, MatSoft was this really interesting platform, lot of functionality, but really most present in the UK. And MatSoft was doing some great work, particularly in the public sector. And we always included MatSoft in our evaluations, Richard, as you recall.
Yeah.
And then shortly before I retired from Forrester, boom, MatSoft gets acquired by Netcall, which was a bigger company with lots of other assets. And wow, all of a sudden things changed and a lot more investment was available. So Richard, welcome. We're thrilled to have you on the show. And I wonder if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your backstory and how you got involved in this wild and wacky world of low code, and maybe tell us a little bit about Netcall as well.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. First of all, I'm indeed impressed to be the godfather of low code and RPA. Obviously known you both for a while now. And that came, like you say, from my days back at MatSoft, where I think it's fair to say we developed a low-code platform without necessarily meaning to develop a low-code platform, because indeed that term hadn't been coined at the point that we started. So my background initially was as a developer. And so I worked at a number of organizations pre-MatSoft where I worked on a payments platform. And that was really at the point where platforms were in their infancy. You know, everything's a platform these days. But at that point, we developed, a platform that multiple organizations could use to set up payment card processing. So nobody had their own digital certificate. There wasn't integrations with banks like you can more easily get now. And we came up with a platform. We had a digital certificate. You could host your payment page with us and take payments on the web as a result. And so I did that for a while. That organization was acquired and ultimately became the largest independent UK payment provider. And at that point, I picked up a job advert for an organization called Evolving Media. And they'd just developed a forerunner to a process within a low-code platform. And at that point, it was a mortgage application tracking solution. So you had 4 or 5 different steps. And when you applied for a mortgage, you went through those steps and you got some proactive alerts. And as a result, they won some awards for customer service. And Evolving Media, I think, realised they'd stumbled across something then. I joined and 3 of us were put to one side, and we spun that out of the digital agency as an organisation, MatSoft, which stood for Multi-Application Tracking Solution at that point. Yeah. And we built it as a platform, and that was where my background, having worked on platforms, was valuable. And the idea was that an organisation could onboard, they could create multiple workflows, applications, each of which could track a process from start to finish. And you could have some proactive notifications, there could be some integrations and so on. And it was obviously very basic back in the day. We're talking 2006 time at that point.
Yep.
We sort of built that out. Started off in the UK financial services arena, having delivered for that building society. Initially, that led to some building society and banks, and ultimately our first couple of big customers being Nationwide Building Society and Santander Bank, both of whom are still with us today, actually. And we sort of onwardly developed it from there, realised maybe that we had created something that was generic, that you could use for really any type of process. It didn't have to be a mortgage, obviously, and delivered it as a platform. And like you say, as that evolved, we then started to work with analysts like yourselves, and that low-code term was coined. And we realised that, without any great forethought, we'd managed to develop a low-code platform without meaning to, or we'd hit the space maybe at just the right time. And
that's kind of like how it happened for a lot of companies, is because we talked about this a few times. Is that everything from screen painters, forms painters, fourth generation, 3GLs, 4GLs, and of course, then thanks to John coming up with the term low code, no code even exists today. But what's interesting is that my first foray into this was actually up the road from you, because you're in Bedford in the UK, and in Hemel Hempstead, I worked for what was McDonnell Douglas Information Systems, and they were partnered on a product called Pro 4, which is all around. And the word platform is interesting. The word low code is interesting, but I always think of this, liken this back to developing to a model where you can encapsulate and reuse to the degree. Because prior to that, it was just coding, everything got coded. It was like even within the same organization, you code 50 different ways to calculate a net present value for a mortgage or something. It was just crazy. I think that fast forward to where we're at today, I think we're seeing this resurgence of low code, no code, or the model. And then we can talk a little bit later about AI on it. It really is changing the game. So you guys were also at the forefront of this. But what would be, because there are lots of vendors out there, as we all know, but what would be your ideal customer? And what would make somebody, you say, that will be successful with them? And maybe even tell our audiences, like, what isn't likely to be someone that's successful with yourselves?
It's a great point. I mean, that reuse point is absolutely key. That is that even today, I'm sure it was on the first analyst reports that John ever wrote, the cornerstone of why you might use a low-code platform. You don't want to be doing the same things over and over and over again. And when we look at Netcall, the organisation that I work for now, the one that acquired Matsoft in 2017, a lot of what we do is working within a sector or an industry and, work out how we can deliver core components, reusability, so that time saving can be realised. We're certainly within our public sector and NHS customer base, they're non-competitive. So they don't need to try and come up with something unique or bespoke to gain market share. They just need to be able to deliver a digital service. So why have we got 2, 3, 4 councils all building a waste process, as an example? There's no value in that for them. And we really drive here now at ensuring our customers, yes, they use our technology, of course we want, but how do they get the best value from it? And that is by sharing components, sharing processes, sharing integration adapters, widgets, all of the drag and drop elements within our platform between each other where they are competitive. And obviously we work for some blue chip organizations as well that are using our technology to try and gain competitive advantage. But even there, we've got a community of content, and they will go, and if they've got an integration to do, if someone's already done it and someone's published that on the community, don't reinvent the wheel. Just drag that in, drop it into your application, and away you go. And I think
the entire industry is changing, Richard. Sorry, John, just before I hand back to you, because I know you've got a follow-up on this, but the industry itself, what you've just described there about, listen, government shouldn't be competing with each other to who can build the best, garbage collection system. Right? It should be the best, and all benefits are all up the street. And hopefully the world's woken up for that. We're going to see a lot of but I also think that that's now transitioning into the enterprise. Like, why would somebody get a mortgage or a bank account with you? Because you've got a better UI or because you're faster? No, I think, banks never used to work that way. It's because they offered a better service. But the idea that technology, because we were building everything in isolation on all these different hardware platforms with different operating systems and languages, we created this conundrum, this legacy sprawl of code, because that's just the only way to do it. But now roll forward. Now we can start to think about these models, what you're describing there for non-competitiveness within government. I think that's going to start to happen where 90% of the banking industry don't need to compete on because they've got a better way to onboard a customer or a better way to offer a mortgage. I think we're seeing that. Sorry, John, I just wanted to set that out because I think Richard raised a valid point there.
Well, and we're going to come on to that. Richard, one thing you said really struck me was that you would work in an industry sector or a customer sector. And it sounds like understanding that sector, whether it be finance or public sector or distribution or whatever it happened to be, would be really critical to you being able to the company being able to create assets that actually are reusable within that sector. Is that right?
I think so. Sector-specific platforms are certainly on the way if they're not here already, but sector-specific content to increase the speed of delivery, I think, is absolutely key. And we're seeing that here now without a shadow of a doubt. Like I say, we have user groups for local government, user groups for NHS, user groups for insurance, and so on. And within each of those, we encourage collaboration, because you're right, Francis, 90% of what a bank does is just the standard back office process and procedure. You're not going to gain competitive advantage there. If you try to be bespoke and do it differently, you're likely just to incur cost that isn't going to drive benefit. It's that top 10% where you can try and differentiate the service you give the customer, the customer success teams that work with individuals to get them through the process as quickly and as efficiently and as easily as possible. That's where you need to be focusing your effort. The 90% should just be done and dusted. And that isn't necessarily the case in all organisations we work with. Not everyone's quite there yet, but they'll get there. And then they can really focus their time and effort on that 10%.
Yeah. I wanted to, there's one other aspect of this, of Netcall and MatSoft that I wanted to highlight, Richard, and maybe we can talk a little bit about that. One of the differentiators for MatSoft, and moving forward to what you call today the Liberty platform, was you guys had a real commitment to try to empower business people or non-technical people to actually serve themselves. And this, as I recall, was very important in the public sector because there just wasn't a lot of tech talent in your typical council organization, for example. Am I remembering that correctly? And are you carrying that forward? And how important is that to the success of the company?
It's absolutely critical. So it's still a central message around use of the Liberty platform. We like to think we're the easiest to use of the low-code vendors out there. I'm sure that'll be challenged. Absolutely fine to do so. But it's certainly what we believe to be our USP, because technical talent, right? We know across the board, everything, software's eating the world. There isn't enough developers out there. There won't be for the foreseeable future. And therefore, people need to do more with us. That's before you even consider budgets being cut, certainly within local and central government and so on. So how do you empower people to get the work done? It's to simplify what they need to do to achieve it. That is still the central message with the Liberty platform. And we've incorporated a huge amount of functionality since the acquisition in 2017. So when we were acquired, we were the low-code platform, now called Liberty Create. Liberty now is a full intelligent automation customer engagement platform. So you've got 5 or 6 key products that make up the platform. That's your contact center, omnichannel messaging platform, web assistance, chatbots, through to your low-code web application builder. And then we've subsequently acquired some organizations, Automagica to provide RPA, a company called Score to provide Liberty Spark, our process mapping capability. And then more recently, an organization called Parble to add IDP, Intelligent Document Processing. These are all capabilities now of that overall intelligent automation platform. And we've acquired them and integrated them in a way that sticks to that central message. It has to be simple to use. So when we were looking for a vendor to buy, we specifically looked for ones that, we could incorporate headless. So their UI, we weren't effectively interested in. It was the back-end engine that we were interested in, because we knew that we would rip and replace that UI, we'd bring that into Liberty, so that when you came to your Liberty controller and you said, I want to provision contact center, I want to build 2 apps, and I want to add some IDP, you would be doing it through a single UI. The menu would be in the same place every time. The language used would be consistent throughout. And that is purely to ensure that you don't need to be a technical developer to set this stuff up, because technical developers, and there will always be a place for developers within a large organization, you're always going to have that buy versus build debate, and there will be certain things that you should indeed build. But for the vast majority, you don't. And if you're purely building, configuring on a platform like ours, we don't want you to use your top tech talent to do that.
Who are the laggards that don't get this? Like, we're all so close to it. We love this. We're passionate about it. We don't think there's any other way you should build today. It was fine 30 years ago, but wake up people. So who are the laggards that don't get it, that want to build for the sake of building, that want to code for the sake of coding? John Richard, do you have a view on that? I mean,
the professional service shops that are selling developers out on a day rate, of course, they've got people on the bench that they need to sell, right? So they're going to push people to build, because if it takes 10 times longer, they're getting 10 times the revenue for
business. Okay, so we get the obvious one. But from a business perspective, the CTO is going, I've got 3 years left in my retirement. I'm just going to stick and build this ourselves, because the problem won't be mine. That can be pushed down the road for a bit longer. Well, what's really going on? Because the low-code market is growing exponentially, but it should be 10 to 100 times its size now.
I think the pushback, the laggards are way less than they were. I mean, and that's obviously the work that you guys have done, right? Educating the community that
we're bullying them.
Yeah, well, and some needed it, right?
Yeah, true.
Because, like you say, what's the easiest thing to do? Stick with the status quo, right? You've built everything in house. You've got a development team to do so. You've people that you've paid, trained up, and they're on your salary, right? So why would you not use it?
You've got processes that those developers use, and even if the business people hate those processes because they're too damn slow, you at least know what they are. And the new processes that go along with a low code are kind of scary.
Well, COVID proved, I hate to bring up COVID because thankfully that's long past, but that actually proved a lot of things for low code, because some of those processes did not work in that world, but work from home or not getting out the front door. So that forced a lot of people to recognize that this was a viable approach. We'll continue to beat the drums, or whip the whips or whatever to get people to go, you know what? Well, it's fine for 30 to 40 years, but it's not fine today to drop to code, as a matter of fact.
And we'll offer the carrots, Francis, because there's some good benefits. So, guys, it's time for shameless self-promotion. You are listening to and watching a Lowdown on Low Code, which is brought to you by Analysis.tech. Francis and I are 2 of the associates within Analysis.tech. We also have colleague Rob Koplowitz, process expert, Dave Marcus, process and business development expert, Andy Bartels, our chief economist, new colleague Rick Greenwald is our data guy. Who am I leaving out, Francis?
I know if I was sure I was listening to. I've heard you so many times I could lie.
Anyway, we bring you podcasts like this every week, and if you are finding them useful, enjoying them, please share with your friends, and we're very interested in your feedback. Hit us up on analysis.tech. Okay. Back to our conversation. Thanks for your patience, Francis. Let's fast forward ahead to this notion that you raised about bespoke solutions, and it appears to us, Richard, that we are witnessing the early stages of a real shift in people's thinking about building applications versus buying, because they can build with far less expense and far more quickly, and they can be more flexible if they're using low code to build bespoke solutions. Of course, reusing things that are commodity. Why would you then buy, a conventional packaged application?
And key word there was build, not write. In decades past, we would write our own in-house applications, and now we're building them.
So at Netcall, you've got application functionality, but you also have platforms. How do you see this playing out? Are people starting to shift their thinking? And should they?
There's always going to be a debate, build versus buy, with every requirement that you have, every solution that's needed within your organization. And I think that's right. There's never going to be a one-size-fits-all solution to every problem. But I think if you're buying off-the-shelf solutions for every problem you've got, the number of suppliers that you're dealing with, the sort of maintenance and support that you're signing yourselves up with each of those organizations is going to become prohibitively expensive to perform that maintenance. And I think one of the biggest benefits I see with an organization that truly adopts a low-code platform, and you know, some big organizations have got more than one, but let's just say you fully adopt a low-code platform, you build 20, 30, 40 apps on it. That's 20 or 30, 40 separate suppliers you haven't got to deal with, DPIAs you haven't got to get drawn up, contracts you haven't got to get legal to push through. And the responsibility for the maintenance of those in terms of the security patching that's required and so on is the vendors, is Netcall's. And most of the organizations that we work with, where we are able to proactively push out their patches, update their container software, keep their operating systems in the VMs running in the cloud fully up to date, it's huge time and cost saving. And security has always been important, right? Of course it has. We all know that. But I think with the advent of AI and some of the advances we're seeing in AI where it's being used maliciously to understand how vulnerabilities can be chained together to exploit software, it's becoming a bigger and bigger risk for a CIO to manage. And therefore, by offloading some of that to a vendor like us, where we're doing it centrally for maybe 600 customers, I think we've got now across the Netcall base entirely, then of course, that's a huge time saving for him and cost saving for him rather than having his teams manage infrastructure or suppliers and ensuring that they're doing that for him. So that I think that's the one benefit that I keep hearing probably over the last 12 months that we weren't hearing 3, 4, 5 years.
Interesting.
Management of the security posture of these applications and the benefit that they're seeing by being able to offload that.
We finally see this word, inheritance, encapsulation, or whatever. Those words so meaningful because if you've got 40 different versions of the app, you've got other things. I mean, that is key. That means you rely on all those vendors keeping up with everything going on, and also the skills. And look, we've seen those 40 vendors are going to get acquired, maybe by a private equity firm that just want to just continue to get the money but not evolve the product. Then you've got the skills base. And one of the things that we see within the low-code platforms, this revolution, is they're often self-aware, self-documenting, easy to understand. And to make a change that ripples through the entire application suite that you've built on that platform, that's kind of like why I don't understand why everybody isn't using a platform in a model to do what they need to do. And then, as you say, write the custom stuff that needs to be customs and unique. Maybe they've got some unique security requirements, but it should be the exceptions, not the rule now. And for decades, it was the other way around.
I mean, it has to be in the toolkit of every CIO, doesn't it? One or more.
Listen, so this is great. So give us our audience an example of a really successful account, a short version of just why they chose you and what made them successful using or a platform approach.
So one of our big accounts in the UK would be Network Rail. They manage the UK rail infrastructure. They've got tens of applications that cover everything within their organisation. We've got some case studies on the website, so it's all public domain information. There's some safety apps in there. There's some apps that are managing the in-station processes and procedures. What they did, they came up with the concept of a digital factory. So they first and foremost built the governance framework around how they were going to decide whether low-code was the right tool to use. And then once it was being built by maybe teams of business analysts or business people that may not have been used to a software development lifecycle, how they were going to govern what they were doing, how they were going to make sure that it was deployed securely, that training was done on it, and so on and so on. They've got a really nice structured framework for that, and they've seen a huge amount of success as a result. And it's literally idea in at the top. Is it low code? Is it so bespoke, whatever, that we have to build it? If it's low code, well, we need to make sure that we're still doing all the good governance steps that we would do if we had developed it using code, but we're just going to do it a lot quicker because we can drag and drop and deliver it, and we can use resources that aren't those technical resources. So if you can get that structure right, you can wrap that governance framework and procedure around it, then it's win-win.
All right.
We'd love to have those folks join us on the podcast. We've had a number who have described their approach to governance. There's still a lot of skepticism out there about business people being involved, but boy, there's been some good work, Richard, I think, just generally in
Railway's international, so that's going to get an international audience as well. I think that's good. That'd be a good client to have, yes.
Yeah, but there's been some good work on cracking the governance nut, essentially.
Yeah,
that just needs to get distributed more widely. I wanted to ask you as well, again, Netcall and Matsoft came together as I was retiring, so I may not be current, but as I recall, Netcall had applications. As I recall, they were big in contact centers. So they had off-the-shelf applications. And I wonder if in coming together, the combined companies use the Matsoft platform, Liberty today, to modernize that functionality. Software is eating the world. Well, maybe low code is eating the world. And I wonder how that played out and if it indicates anything about the future of off-the-shelf apps.
I mean, it was a huge driver for the acquisition by Netcall. So they realised that customer experience can start with that initial web chat, that initial phone call that you make to an organisation. Like, we're all so used now to the Amazon experience, the Domino's pizza experience, right? We're used to that, very clear, clean user experience. And every organisation has to aspire to that if you want to keep the customers that you've got. So Netcall realised, I think, early on that their contact centre software was really well received within the market, but that was typically the entry point to the experience that you would then have with that organisation. And it can't just end there. It couldn't just end there. It couldn't be a case that you'd be handed off into office and you would disappear. So they realised that by building applications, CRMs, whatever it might be, but embedding those, having those integrated within that agent experience, you could still have a central contact center if you wished, but equally you could break that contact center up and you could put them into those individual business areas. But the experience that you would get would be end to end, regardless of where it was. From contact through to resolution, all through one UI, hopefully slick and seamless as a result. And that's basically what we've been working on over the last 10 years, is to join that offering together to produce that end-to-end digital transformation that everyone's driving. And you need both elements. You need that customer engagement tooling, but equally you need the intelligent automation platform to then underpin the process that the individual will go through once they've contacted you.
So Netcall, the netted out, a lot of nets going on around here.
Your head.
So, yeah, exactly. So Netcall, I think the way I would summarize this is Netcall needed a better UI, needed a more modern UI, and they needed to their core competency, the contact center, into the enterprise and basically help the customer organizations manage end to end the experience from the experience all the way through delivery of value.
The customer engagement side was so well received. The organizations that they were working with at the time sort of didn't want them to stop there. They didn't want to then hand it off to an experience that wasn't as good as they'd got within the contact center. And that's where we then come in. So we can provide those apps that carry that engagement all the way.
So how did you, I'm imagining these conversations, Richard. So you're talking about a merger, and I imagine the Netcall technical people came in and said, are we really going to base our future on this low code stuff? This was 10 years ago. You must have really had to prove to them that you could scale and that you could actually handle the operations behind the contact center?
I mean, for anyone who's been involved in the technical due diligence process, you know how fun they can be. So yeah, we had to prove a lot. We had to show a lot. We actually built some example applications for them to sort of prove the concepts that they were getting from some of their key sectors. So they'd been approached by some councils, for example, knew they wanted to carry that citizen engagement all the way through into the back office. So they said, build us what is now actually we refer to as Citizen Hub. So that's like our council CRM for the citizen, if you like. They said, build us an example of that, show us how that can integrate with the contact center, prove that this acquisition will work for us. We did that. And we've since deployed Citizen Hub. It's out there, huge number of councils in the UK using it. We've actually just picked up some outside of the UK as well. And we did something similar in the health space, Patient Hub. And that hub concept is something we've carried on through. This is where we're building solutions on the low-code platform for a specific sectoral vertical.
Right.
In terms of has it worked? Well, the intelligent automation revenues now make up more than 50% of Netcall's overall revenue. So I think the numbers speak for themselves. So I think on that basis alone, you couldn't argue it's been a decent acquisition for Netcall.
So there's two things I got. One is I know that I was in the UK a few years ago, and this was in the early days, not so early days, but RPA. I think that the government, councils, healthcare, NHS were so desperate to get operational efficiency. A lot of this, COVID and also government funding. So they turned to RPA, but that's a continuum of automation as is processes, which is great. But I do see this revolution now of looking back at the heart of those processes and those applications and rethinking that they don't need to be as big, fat with all that baggage that they used to be. And that is a driver now for real sincerity into solving these big IT total cost of ownership just nightmares. So I think that's a good. So just before we wrap, John and I talk about this a lot on our calls. AI is disrupting everything. We think AI is the revolutionary hook to really re-energize what people think about code. It's just they go together so well, like the icing on the cake. Where do you think that's going to impact you, and where are you looking to that in the future for you and your clients? Just a quick roundup.
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine AI. It's every conversation I have with every one of our customers on every governance call that I join. And that's for good reason. It's a revolutionary technology, generational technology, right? So we sort of understood that relatively early on, I think, and we've built our own AI team. We base our AI capabilities around open source models that we run on GPU infrastructure ourselves. That is to get around the challenge that a lot of our UK customers have with using US vendors and where does my data go and GDPR and all those challenges. So at the minute we're using the Llama 3 model that we're running ourselves, and we've based a load of core capabilities around that central AI infrastructure. And the reason we've done that is when we've spoken to organizations, they all know they need AI. They all can understand the benefits of it. They've read the headlines. They, as a CIO, want to be delivering AI-based projects into their organization. But they've got the technical challenge of how to go around implementing that. So we decided, yes, we could just offer you an API endpoint to an LLM that they could use for whatever they wanted. But they'd have to come up with how they wanted it. They'd have to work on the prompt engineering. They'd have to build RAG databases. It's all too much of a technical challenge for them. So instead, we've created capabilities that they can just enable. So if they've got a text box in an app that they've built that the customer can use to send them information, they've now got a little AI symbol that they can click that will summarize the text automatically, that will do sentiment analysis, the click of a button, rather than thinking about what that means when you're prompting an LLM to get a response back to do something simple. And we've seen a much higher rate of adoption off the back of that. And we're now sort of trying to go further with that outside of just the standard text, natural language processing type arena, to understanding documents and building sort of chatbots that can Q&A content that you've got within an application that you can start, using.
I think that's the advantage of the model is AI will ripple through all of the stuff that the user sees. We're also seeing, and maybe we can get you back for another conversation, a deeper dive on AI within the platform itself, how it's helping accelerate the development of applications.
That's the other strand of activity that we're working on at the moment, natural language authoring, as we're many
Right.
others I'm sure are calling it. How do I
Yes.
build apps quicker? By getting AI to deliver my build configuration rather than me having to do the dragging and dropping myself.
And that's where we're seeing innovation. John, back to you. I know we're up for time.
Well, just real quickly, Richard. So because of the sensitivity in Europe about GDPR and where's the data stored and so forth, you're going with an open source approach. Do you believe that there's a compromise in the functionality you're able to offer customers because you're going you're going that route?
I mean, we're building our capabilities around that open source model that we're running to avoid those questions and concerns.
Okay.
Equally, we allow any app to be integrated with, in theory, any API endpoints. We'll have customers that might go directly to Anthropic, to OpenAI, to anyone else they want to use, because that answers their specific use case better
Got
than
it.
maybe a core capability we offer. But I think just offering core capabilities means that we're seeing a quicker rate of AI adoption because it's just a feature you take.
Because it's so much easier.
Yeah.
Hey, Richard, thanks so much for a really, really revealing conversation.
Awesome.
Love the conversation about build versus buy in particular. That's a really great one. Thanks for joining us, folks who are still with us. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Again, this is Lowdown on Low Code, a weekly podcast brought to you by analysis.tech. Look us up, analysis.tech. Check out Netcall's Liberty platform at netcall.com. I think if you don't know it, you'll be pleasantly surprised. There's a lot of functionality there. Thanks for joining, everyone. And again, Happy New Year. All the best for 2025.
Thanks, Richard.
Great to speak, guys. Thank you.